Welcome to On the Move. Today I have journalists Stavros Malichudis and Florian Schmitz with me to talk about the impact of migration policies on freedom of press in Greece as it has been gradually escalating. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining the program with me today.
Hey, Begüm. Thank you for having me and us.
And me.
Thanks. Let me introduce you a little bit shortly. Florian is a multimedia journalist and a freelance correspondent based in Thessaloniki in Greece. In his reporting, he focuses on migration, Greece and the Balkans, minorities, human rights, press freedom, and environment. He has done extensive work on the pushbacks, discrimination, and unlawful behavior towards asylum seekers in Greece. And Stavros is also a reporter at Solomon. Solomon is an investigative outlet, and he's also a member of Reporters United, which is again a network of investigative journalists. And of course, he's also based in Greece. Welcome, guys, again.
Thank you.
So today, I think I saw on yesterday or something like that, I saw on Twitter, Mitarakis wrote that there are two fronts in migration: Turkey and smugglers on one hand, the European left media, and NGOs on the other, denouncing our country, he says, to open the borders. And he argues that Greece legally and constitutionally guards his borders. And we have been seeing this narrative, a dominating narrative circulated by the Greek government since they came to power in 2019 onwards. So and of course, in recent days, so there is a clear attack on, even from the first day, there was a clear attack against the NGOs and people in solidarity with refugees. But gradually, we are also seeing that the freedom of press in Greece is very seriously declining over the years as a result of the government's approaches. I think on the 2022 World Press Freedom Index published by Reporters Without Borders, Greece ranked 108 among 180 countries, which is quite actually low on the list. And it's been further going down. And I guess today we might be covering and reflecting on also the wiretapping scandal around the use of spyware targeting opposition politicians, but also journalists in Greece. So there is a lot to actually cover, but as I have started my kind of main argument and aim to talk about today is how migration policies are having an impact on freedom of press and the work of journalists on the ground in both international and local journalists. And to begin with, I want to, get to know both of you a bit more and ask you, how do you think your work has had an impact, and how do you think your work has been, struggling within this milieu, I guess. And I want to start with Stavro, with you.
Yes, thank you for the nice intro. For me, one of the main issues, and which is very telling from what you mentioned, is that, for example, I also saw what Mr. Mitaraki said, but it's actually not his job to make these statements, and I mean it from a literal perspective. He's the Minister of Migration, and he's not the Minister of Citizen Protection or from the Army, which are the bodies that should be responsible with guarding the borders and speaking on behalf of these law enforcement agencies. So I think this can be a very telling example. You have the Minister of Migration, who, if you take his tweets or his live interviews or his articles, very, very, very rarely refers to issues of migration or of integration or of policy. So I think this is one very telling example. He talks more about how Greece protects its border and less about what is his actual job. About the impact of the migration policies, I think you are also both following Greece. You know how things are. It's I think it has become tighter and tighter, it is tight to report on these issues because they are always seen from this national perspective and from the perspective of some people that if you report on these violations of human rights, for example, you somehow target Greece and you somehow pose some internal threat. So it's a very, very difficult issue to, to keep balances at and to try to report on it.
But I'm going to interrupt you, but from my experience, I've been following Greece only in the past few years. You're one of the first journalists that I know closely who was also like directly targeted for your work. So can you a little bit tell us about what happened?
Yes, it was revealed last November that I was under surveillance from the state surveillance agency. It was revealed through a newspaper article, which also mentioned other people who were under surveillance, including lawyers and NGO workers who worked with refugees. My guess, Florian can also say what he thinks is, but I think some dozens of journalists, I believe, must be under surveillance, especially when it comes to refugees and reporting on migration. And I think this issue also reinforces the whole attitude and the whole approach migration and the people who report on it, the humanitarian workers who work on this field, how this is seen as something that has to do with national threat, with national security, with internal threats. So I think this also my case and also all the other cases, I think they are also very telling of this wider environment.
Yeah. How can you also maybe briefly also tell about Solomon's work for people to know, and what kind of investigative work you're doing on migration and how Solomon is responding to this criminalization from the government side?
Sure. Solomon was founded in 2016. Initially, it was just a group of people who actually wanted, to be of use, to help with the bigger numbers of refugees and asylum seekers arriving in the country. It went through different.
Oops, we lost Stavros here. Maybe we'll get to Florian in the meantime. Let's
very slowly.
Let's get to you while we're waiting for Stavros to come back. Can you tell us about your work and how do you think the policies have been having an impact in general on international media? Maybe you can also comment.
Well, I am the DW correspondent basically in Greece, and I've done a lot of reporting on migration, but also on other things. So I've been looking at the issue of press freedom, not only in times of these escalations now, but also from this foreign perspective and coming from Germany, where of course we also have issues, but like just this point of view of a foreigner and looking at how things work here. So there are a lot of things that justify the fact that Greece has plummeted so much on the press freedom index, and that was never ranked really high either. Greece is not a country where you easily get access. It's a country where when you call the foreign press office, for example, they don't say, they answer like, nah, and not use names. And it's very difficult for me to get a permit to film, for example, somewhere, right? Like the whole filming thing is very difficult. And that has to do like with public schools, for example, public hospitals. It's almost impossible for me to film there. And when I started dealing with migration, maybe to start talking about the impact of that, I was part of a research team in May 2020, where for the first time we could actually prove. I mean, Spiegel had started the whole thing with material they had received from the Turkish site. Clear videos that prove a lot. We then, in May 2020, could prove with a lot of field work on the ground and with the help of Bellingcat, of Lighthouse reports and so forth, we could prove that pushbacks weren't just a thing of the border anymore, but that the whole operation was extended into the mainland, that people would get kidnapped, arrested, detained under the false pretense of issuing them new papers, and then deported to Turkey. We could prove that they were here first and that they were on the other side then. And we could do that also because DW has this huge network of correspondence in the country. So despite the fact that we were sort of restricted by the pandemic, we could make investigations from both sides of the border, which was very essential. And to go back to the impact, what we would hope, after almost a year of reporting from various media, and Brussels always saying, okay, like, we need proof, if this happens, this is bad, but we need proof. So we all thought that this would be a game changer, like presenting this evidence actually would change somewhat the narrative in Brussels and at least reprimand Greece openly. It did not have that impact at all. And all of the very serious investigations that came, especially from Spiegel ever since, and well, Lighthouse reports, we got to say, Lighthouse reports, and then international media collaborated with them, Spiegel, Al Jazeera, Guardian. So all of our colleagues that we know from the field, who are very passionate and very exact when it comes to working this way, proving that Frontex had visual contact, seeing pushbacks and observing pushbacks, and having all of these stories that we hear when we talk about with people on the move, with the victims of violent pushbacks also, there was so much proof and so much evidence on the table that remained totally disregarded from Brussels. And I guess the impact that we would have wanted was much more political pressure, was a change of agenda within the European Commission, because the Parliament is quite outspoken. Some members of the European Parliament are quite outspoken. And of course, also the European Council, that's the member states, because in Germany, in Western Europe, the whole migration issue before the war in Ukraine has become a niche topic. So while we, being on the ground in Greece, we're seeing that the situation was becoming worse and worse, despite constant reporting, the indifference in Europe kept growing. People just didn't care anymore. And then the war in Ukraine happened, and then this whole surge of positive emotions towards Ukrainian refugees that is ebbing down now as well. But it was very strange for us to see that it didn't have, that it hardly had any impact at all. And the only impact that I detect is exactly what you quoted from Mitarakis initially in the beginning of this conversation, that he's saying there's the Turks and their NGOs and leftist journalists. I am not a leftist journalist. I am a journalist. And I don't have an open border policy either. I think the only thing I'm saying about migration is that anybody who enters the European Union has the right to a fair asylum procedure. This is all I've ever been saying, and this is very people when you say that, people immediately put you in this very left-wing NGO sort of narrative, like you could collaborate with the Turks. You do this, you do that, and people usually call me an agent of the Turks, an agent of NATO, of the European Union, of North Macedonia, and always for some reason of the Jews, but never as a reporter. And what I see also is that this feeling of enemyhood is growing a lot within the Greeks, and not only on the social media, but that people openly attack me when I walk around with a DW microphone and see me as an enemy. They don't and they don't ask questions. They don't ask, so you went to Evros, what have you seen? They go like, you know, you are a traitor, and go home, and we will kill you, and we will find you, and all this kind of stuff. So it's quite an the impact is not as productive as I would have liked it to be.
Yeah. Stavros is back with us in the meantime. Thank you. And I want to add to that, Florian, is like, of course, there's a stigmatization and stereotyping of what an NGO means, what solidarity means. And I think what we're losing is actually the rule of law, right? What people's actual rights that are protected by international law is at risk in terms of this, and nobody actually seems to care. Like, for example, about a couple of years ago, academics who are funded by European Commission put out a statement saying that you are actually, as the Commission, paying us to do this research on migration. We write you the reports, we produce academic outputs that critically approach the policies or reveal what's happening on the ground, in good or bad cases, I guess. And then you never take into account actually what we suggest. So there is actually a lot of work being produced, a lot of solidarity among academics and journalists and reporters, investigatives, but the result is actually what we see on the ground in Greece, right? So the EU Commission turning a blind eye, and European Union, I guess, structures, because it's not just one thing, I guess, turning a blind eye to what we've been experiencing on the ground, which allows the authorities in individual countries like Poland, like Hungary or Lithuania, you know, and Greece, to completely act on their own. I mean, you know, like when Erdogan opened the borders.
The thing is also that it didn't start with the Mitsotakis administration. It started earlier. It was like there were pushbacks also under the administration of Alexis Tsipras, the former prime minister, and people like Sean Binder, Nasos Karakitsos, and Sarah Mardini were arrested in 2018. A year before Mitsotakis got voted into office. So this whole blind eye policy of the European Union has been, you know, the source of all the wrongdoings in Greece from the very beginning. Just paying money to the Greek, to the state of Greece, I mean, we've all been to Moria, we've all been to Samos prior to the new camps, which is a whole different issue. But I wonder where these billions of euros have been spent, because I've not seen that money in the camps. And there was also extensive reporting on how horrible the situation was.
You're talking about the pre-Mitsotakis government, right? Because now we can see in the camps where the money is going on surveillance and, you know, AI technologies.
Exactly. But I'm just saying it did not start with the Mitsotakis administration, and it's not a question of left wing or right wing like we make it out to be in Greece, especially where we have this mindset of the civil war, and basically extreme left wing and extreme right wing people dominate the public discourse, and everything else sort of happens behind closed doors. So it's like this either or mentality, like either you are with the Greeks and you're against the Turks, or you are with the Turks and you're against the Greece, and you're against Greece, and all like what we call reality, you know, this gray zone basically disappears into some like behind a cloud in a way, and that is an issue. I see this a lot when I report that people tell me, well, you'd never said this about Tsipras. And this is not true. Like, I was very critical with Tsipras as well, making Turkey a safe third country, for example, the whole EU-Turkey deal. I think most of us were highly critical about this. And so it's not that we're waiting for Tsipras to come back, but mainly I wait for the European Union to open their mouths and say, okay, as the Commission, like being like the main role of the Commission is to safeguard the constitution of the European Union, and they're not doing that job at all. Despite
let me come
all
while we have
that we've delivered.
Yeah, while we have Stavros for a second, let me go back to him. Stavros, can you now? I want to go back to what's happening now on the ground. Actually, like Evros has become one of the specific areas that we've been focusing in terms of the pushbacks, and Der Spiegel has been extensively reporting on this. But the recent incident that happened in Evros created a major problem where both the government is now attacking the NGOs and Der Spiegel, and particularly the Der Spiegel journalist Yorgos Christides. But I think I lost Stavros again. But in that meantime, maybe again I'll have you, Florian, because you're also as knowledgeable about the issue. Can you, if Stavros is back?
Yes,
hey.
It works. Okay.
So you know the question.
I heard the question. I don't know what's up because the internet connection seems to be very well, but I don't know. And I wanted to say very briefly that, for example, you mentioned Der Spiegel and Yorgos Christides, and with the previous government, Christides was considered to be anti-Syriza, like anti-Syriza. So now they consider him to be anti-New Democracy. So I think Christides does something correctly. Because if each government they consider him, to be too critical of them, I think he does something correctly, and it's what Florian said. We all reported back then on the same way. Personally, I was reporting on the same issues, and people who today attack us on Twitter, for example, back then they would write me to tell me like, congrats about this piece. So it's not. I think it's not the journalists. At least the journalists I can talk about, and I know that have changed because they report on the same way they did, and I think they will report on the same way with the next government. But it's more an issue of people who get annoyed because their party has had critical reporting or not. About Evros,
Yeah, no, I want to ask specifically a lot of people have some idea about what happened, but it's been a bit messy. So there has been a lot of solidarity messages for, a number of issues, but particularly lately with Yorgos. But what happened on the ground, very briefly, if you could explain to our audiences, and how we see the situation now in its recent developments.
Yorgos has been reporting on the pushbacks extensively for the past years. And he has participated in the investigations that Florian mentioned also. Florian also has been part of them. And I think he has done it's what we say public interest reporting. This is the definition of public interest reporting in my view, because journalism has the obligation to uphold and to defend basic human rights. So this is what these journalists have done. Evros, as you very well know, is a very, very difficult area, and it has some very weird connotations and meanings and symbolism. And Yorgos has kept reporting on the people who arrive there. It's an issue of the past bans that people arrive on some Greek islet, I think there is a word in English, some small piece of land in Evros, and then the Greek government basically lies and they say we have not found them, but the Greek government has a great surveillance system worth many tens of millions of euros in Evros. So if they cannot find the people with this surveillance system, this should also be of concern to everybody and to the EU paying for it. And then since Yorgos was following the story of the Syrian refugees who were stranded there for some weeks, he reported on them. He met with the family. He went to Philakio to see the family, and I think he has done his job. And our job is to spend time working on stories and to talk to people. And I think that if someone doesn't want you to talk to people, your obligation and and the public service still has to be met, and you have to talk to these people. So Yorgos has been attacked by the government of course, by far right trolls, but I don't think that he, like he would bother. I think he's used. And he's used because, as I said, when he was reporting on Syriza, he had the same reactions.
You mean he's used to it? Yeah,
yes.
It's been happening all the time. Yeah,
I think especially with the foreign correspondents, it's a totally different reality because they are really seen as some kind of internal threat, and they get this level of abuse. Also, with I think it was problematic also with the past government. It was not in this level and this extent, but there were pressures. It's not that we woke up in 2019 and everything was perfect then, and suddenly things got weird.
Yeah.
But I think that especially the foreign correspondents, they are really, really seen as some kind of internal threat, and they are really seen like that they have some dark motives and that they want something very dark about the country. And I wouldn't believe it. And I think whoever knows Yorgos knows that he's also, like he loves his country. So I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't allow these people to, to think that they are the only ones who can decide what's good for the country and how things should be done. And I would give him the right to report on the way he thinks and on the way this top international media organization trusts him to do. And I think the media that trust Florian, for example, Yorgos, other colleagues, Katie Fallon, who reports for The Guardian, all the other, foreign correspondents, I think the media who trust them to do the job, they know something. And they know if they can be reliable and trustworthy and if they do their job with dignity.
Yeah.
Good words.
Yeah, get in this back. Do you have anything to add, Florian?
Yeah, I think it's very important to add that something that has changed a lot since 2019 was that it became harder and harder to get access to asylum seekers on the islands, because the media have focused a lot on the islands, also because it's a lot easier to detect the boat on the sea than to do extensive research at Evros, which is a long border with hills and mountains and woods, where it's a lot harder to and the military zone, which you're not allowed to enter. So it's a lot harder to detect people there and to do research there. But apart from that, it's been like, the Minister of Migration always underlines in press statements, that asylum seekers can do whatever they want. They can talk to the press. They can leave the camps. This is not entirely true, because the Ministry of Migration, especially during the pandemic, has made it almost impossible for journalists to go into the camps, to see, to film. We know from people within the camp that the police, the Greek police in the camp takes away cell phones. They don't want footage to leave the camp. They're trying to very symbolically to maintain this narrative of the good government that is helping people, but the Turks basically sent refugees to Greece in order to attack the country. So in this situation where the government is making access harder, explaining this basically with no, trust us, we do good things, but don't go and see for yourself, because we're Greeks, we're good, we are part of the European family, whatever that is. It is our obligation as journalists to check 2 or 3 times. It's ethically incorrect to rely on government sources. So, what I tell students of mine when I teach journalism is always that our first job is to show up somewhere. That means to be there, to see for yourself, to talk to people, and then talk to other people, and then talk to other people, to find a lot of sources and get a very diverse image of the situation. But this with the Greek government has become very, very difficult, especially at Evros, in times where basically when we talk to migrants on the Turkish side, we are with one foot in jail, because we are then under suspicion of being human traffickers, just because we speak to people who in an irregular manner because they're refugees, you know, cross the border. But the Greeks just call them illegal crossings. It's not illegal. And I don't know how many times we've repeated this, quoting international lawyers, international human rights organizations, saying that people who cross the border may ask for asylum and they don't have to cross through official crossings. It's just not the way it is. It's not how it works. You know, if it was that easy, we probably wouldn't have that problem. But we see that the Greek government is controlling the narrative on migration a lot, also causing you know, like, or supporting these very negative reactions that we get from the extreme left and the extreme right, mainly. You know, these two sides who keep yelling and yelling. And covering up all the space for people who are actually interested and actually would like to shed light on all of this, but are scared because people have become really aggressive towards us, towards NGO people. So the government has made it possible for people to actually see journalists and NGOs as the exact same thing, you know, attacking Greece. And this is what Mitarakis again underlined in his quote. So if you know, if we try to get access to shed actual light on actual situations, it has become almost impossible. But it's, as Stavros said, in the interest of the public. So this is the obligation, also the right of a journalist to get access in whatever way possible to shed light on the truth, you know. And nothing illegal happened either, you know. It's been totally blown out of proportion. And also very irregular is that a government attacks a journalist with a name, you know, actually making it very understandable who they're talking about. We had the same thing with Nektaria just about a week earlier. A government attacking a Greek journalist with her name and making her the target of all this hatred that we face in the social media anyways. And it's true, just to finish this thought, it's true what Stavros said, that, you know, as a foreign correspondent, you're specifically attacked. And Yoros is somewhat of a strange case in Nektaria because they work for foreign outlets as Greek journalists, though. And I think it's very interesting to see how they picked out the two Greek journalists, you know, after like Katie and me have published on Press Freedom prior to this, and there was no reaction. But when this came out, publicly attacked and basically depicted as enemies.
Yeah. Stavro, are you here with us? I really appreciate Stavros's urge to be able to join us from a very far land, but I think it's not working. So I apologize from our audiences that it's on and off. At the time we have a glimpse of Stavros and then he leaves us, but so I think he's back again. Are you there, Stavro? Yeah.
Just speak, man. Just speak right now. I can hear you.
No, we can't hear you. In the meantime, I'm going to also, because we have very limited time, I want to ask about, you know, you both made it very clear that the limitations of the authorities in Greece that did not just start in 2019. It dates all the way back, actually. So we see a gradual change. Is this what you're underlying, obviously? And I think, in a sense, there's a mismanagement of migration in Greece and in Europe in general, anyways. But what has been really interesting for me to see in countries like Poland, Hungary, and now in Greece, that very severe policies on migration, you know, migration policies are actually about people on the move, right? People who are entering through diverse ways. They could be economic migrants. Migration management is not just about the management of refugees and asylum seekers, right? So in that sense, to me, migration is supposed to be about how to govern, you know, mobility in a sense. But what we see in many of these countries, maybe it's not so readily, directly visible to us, is that gradually these strict migration regimes are joining with corruption, joining with freedom of press, freedom of association, you know, severe regulations of civil society and NGOs that support people on the move. And you know, in many aspects of civil society, what we see in migration management is becoming a management of its own citizens, of Greek citizens in this case, as we see with Christides and Nectaria, or and Stavros himself, is also about the population in general, because I'm also talking to, you know, local people here. Yeah, so Stavros, I'm talking to local people here, is that, you know, while migration management is becoming a huge expenses, you know, Florian, you mentioned about how much money is being spent on migration, but a lot of the needs and a lot of the issues that needs to be covered for the citizens themselves, there's never a money. There's, you know, there's not enough money for healthcare. There's not enough money for other public management. So in that case, I'm really interested in understanding.
Let's throw this number out just once more, because I hear a lot from Greeks, you know, that the state of Greece is losing money dealing with migration. The state of Greece has received 3.3 billion euros since 2017, and I think, Solomon, you guys are doing a lot of investigations on how this money is spent. I have my doubts that that the state of Greece has spent even a single dime on migration itself. So just to, like, you know, you always have to go back to the very basics, I think, in this.
Yeah, but if we ever get Stavros back, actually, we can ask him as well, but no. Let's go on. What do you think in general then to this discussion, Florian?
Well, what I can, what I think is that in the beginning, when it all started after 2015, and these very you know.
Hold on, just to pause you. Now we have Stavros. Maybe he can speak for 2 seconds while we have him on board. Sorry to interrupt, Florian. Stavros, can you respond while you're online? No. Okay.
Well, we've seen, remember all these imagining images from Lesbos in 2015, people coming and everybody was helping. We also remember the same scenes from Germany, you know, people applauding refugees who would arrive. And then when it started, you know, when people got bored, basically, of helping, when the surge of emotion was ebbing down, and it became part of reality and part of everyday life. This is when the problems started, and this is when, you know, the authorities became more strict. We mentioned Nasus Karakitsos and Sean Binder before. It was when human rights organizations started warning that if we start taking away rights of people on the move, you know, their human rights and thus universal rights, it won't stop there. This will, at one point or the other, affect us as European citizens as well. And Sean Binder is a good example. No, Yorgos, who's being criminalized. We have actually a lot of examples how European citizens are, like me as a journalist. It's getting harder for me to inform people. I feel also people don't want to be informed. They don't want to hear what I have to say, looking at things. But also, what I think is very, very startling is that what we see is that Europeans are being deprived of their right to help. You know, like that it's criminal to give somebody on the move a bottle of water or a blanket. That we are in times where the state of Greece basically forces me to let somebody die, or report him to the authorities, knowing that this person probably will be illegally deported. And this is something very crucial. And we see it, like, you know, the Evros border, especially with its, you know, with its longitude, with the way it's a military zone. It's like a wound, like a cancer, you know, that like the lack of human rights that spreads into Europe further and further, and it's fed by this huge indifference from Western European states who think, you know, it's not my issue anymore. It's so far away. We live in times where people still think that, you know, Turkey, Syria, Iran, very far away. It's not, you know. I mean, people go to the Dominican Republic on vacation, and it's this imagined a distance from Western Europe that make it possible for people just like shield off and not understanding that this is not about helping people. This is about maintaining a system of rights that we have that protect ourselves.
Yeah. In that sense, I think, I mean, it seems Stavros is again frozen, so I can't add him to join us. It's a shame, but I want to finally finish off with, you know, how solidarity has become significant in this case as a response to actually criminalization of solidarity. Because what we see is recently, you know, there's a lot, you know, a lot of people, when I talk to them, they say, you know, Greece is the, you know, the founder of democracy, and it is the house where, you know, rights have emerged, or they say this is European Union, there will be a limit in Greece. Greece will never become, let's say, you know, an authoritarian regime. But what we see is giving signals to that. But regardless, although I'm not arguing in the sense that, you know, it's not true. I mean, we have examples of Poland and Hungary, how the situation can very fast forward diminish is very possible. And Spiegel also wrote recently this week about the potential possibility of authoritarianism creeping in Greece. But again, although I agree, and this is actually my argument, and not because, you know, Greece is the center of you know, the democracy, but because I think now we have the tools, we have the, you know, the mechanisms, and we know the so-called the spiel. We know how it works. We've learned it in Hungary, we've learned it in Turkey, we've learned it in Poland, and I think we have the capacity to unite in solidarity with refugees, but with one another as you know, residents of the European Union in Greece.
I don't know if I'm as optimistic as you are, because I think what I think is important is that Greece now is in the center of public attention, not because of migration, unfortunately, because it should have been in the center of attention for many years now, at least since 2019, when the pushbacks started to become a strategy. And the breach of law became just unbearable. I mean, we know from lawyers in Samos, from Dimitris, basically, who says, you know what, I file pushback cases, but we don't focus on that anymore. We focus on all the crimes that happen around the pushback, like from theft, you know, sexual abuse, violence, unbelievable things that. When I discuss them with some Greek people who don't talk to me anymore, say, we don't do that, just the Turks do that, right? I think that the reason why I don't believe that we know how it works now is because people are still, first of all, indifferent in Western Europe. And second of all, we have not learned in the European Union to respect and to give value to regional conflicts. I know from which is in this case the conflict between Greece and Turkey. You know, both countries know very well how to push each other's buttons. That Erdogan just needs to say, you know, the islands, and you know, and Turkey and Lausanne, and the Symphonia, like he can say that, and everybody in Greece will go berserk. This is also why Erdogan sent all like these refugees with buses to the Greek-Turkish border in 2020. He knew exactly what would happen, how the media in Greece would react. And the same way Mitsotakis knew exactly how Erdogan would react when he in Washington, good friends now, Athens and Washington, hand in hand, and forming this new front of NATO at the European external borders, or fortifying these borders. He knew exactly what would happen if he said, "Well, Washington, you should not send any planes to Turkey." So
but I'm a bit lost right now, Florian. Like, what are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say that if we don't look at these regional conflicts, and if we don't start to connect these issues, for a Western European audience, for a non-Greek audience, then people will not understand how the wiretapping, how Erdogan sending ships to the Aegean Sea is connected to all of this, and how this makes it possible for the Greeks to dominate this narrative, to make it for Western European, it'll be very hard to understand how the Greek government manages to say that Erdogan uses refugees to attack Greece, because this is the narrative that we have, and we need to explain this a lot more detailed with all these contexts for a Western European audience to understand the complexity of the situation. And to make it, and this is, I guess, also our job as foreign correspondents here, to have this, to collaborate with our Greek colleagues on this and get their word out, because they do things from the inside with this, from the Greek perspective. And investigative journalism in Greece has been actually picking up since 2019. I mean, Stavros is a good example, but also Koukakis, Reporters United and Solomon and so forth, and Inside Story, who've been doing amazing jobs, and jobs that Greek journalists need to do, shed light on things, how they happen in Greece and not from this foreign perspective. If this happens, I, as a foreign journalist, can actually focus on putting this into a more European context, and explain to a European audience and how far everything is connected, and how everything sort of led to this situation.
Okay.
Does it make any sense?
I think so. Yeah. And but since we're already out of our time, and Stavros seems to be back for a few more minutes, maybe I want to give the last word to you, Stavros. Is there anything you want to, put there? I apologize that this has been.
No. But you can hear me correctly now. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to join every couple of minutes. I agree with everything Florian said. I mean, I have been hearing you, but I don't know, I couldn't talk. For me, lots of interesting points have been pointed out, and I just wanted to say something about the NGOs and the whole criminalization. We have this targeting of the NGOs, but at the same time, the government still does business with them. And this is very, very bizarre. Like, they are accusing the NGOs constantly, but then why do they give to the NGOs the responsibility of the unaccompanied minors, for example? Because in my view, like, the state should take responsibility for the unaccompanied minors. And I don't understand how this government that has been so vocal and so aggressive against NGOs, like, then why do they continue to give basic state responsibilities to them? Because, for example, also the interpretation in the asylum service is provided by an NGO. So why does the state, if NGOs are so bad and they are corrupted and they have some bad motives, why does the state still do business with them? And and more importantly, why does the state give so basic and important responsibilities to them? And on the targeting of journalists, I mean, Florian has said everything, and I also agree that we need to work together on this, like Greek and international correspondents, and to really explain all these complicated issues of this very, very interesting neighborhood in the world.
Thank you very much to both of you. Is there anything you want to add for another second, and then we close? Florian?
Well, I just hope that people will be more interested in foreign politics. And being a foreign correspondent, I can tell that even in Germany, Germans will never understand Germany when they don't start dealing with foreign politics.
Yeah.
Stavros, is there anything you want to add?
I think in our case, we should maybe read and learn a bit more about our past. And this would explain, and this would help a lot. I think that would be a good first step in the understanding of our region and our country. And yeah, and I wish the government also showed more responsibility in how, in the public discourse and into how the public discourse is treated. Because lately there have been lots of attacks against journalists. There has been a very, very increasing, harsh rhetoric. And I think this can be very, very dangerous. This can be expected by people who support a party or by someone who wants to, just attack others on Twitter. But I feel that government officials and political representatives, they have to have some higher standards and protect.
It's almost like they're unleashing the mob to find us.
Yeah. It is.
Well,
and thank you very much for the patience with my internet.
Oh no, I'm sorry that you've had to sit in that car for an hour with us with trying to connect. I appreciate your patience and not leaving and say So I appreciate you both joining the program, and to everyone who's watched us, we also are grateful for your patience for the technical difficulties that we had. I appreciate all of you in Greece who are doing very amazing job, actually, in terms of, because one of the things that has been really important in Greece now, because NGOs and human rights organizations' work, especially on migration, have been severely limited. And now, actually, we see journalists doing human rights reporting, which is a new trend, in my opinion, also that has been increasing, where reporters, journalists who are writing about human rights violations in Greece are contributing to reporting and documenting human rights abuses in a number of countries in the past few years, with the migration issues particularly. So in that sense, I think there are a lot of things we need to think about how our work is evolving in journalism.
Yeah.
You wanted to say something, Florian?
Well, I was just going to say that this is not new, that journalists document and contribute to the reporting of human rights violations. But I think what's new within the European Union, and this is not just in Greece, but also in Poland and Hungary, is that when people call us activists, it's not true. I don't want to be an activist. I'm not an activist. But in a situation where press freedom is limited and where it becomes increasingly difficult to work as a journalist, you are being forced to be an activist in a way. Like every question you file to the government is almost like an act of activism. I don't want this. I would like to just do my job, but this is for the European Union and Greece to, like, their job is to provide an environment in which I can work freely and contribute my work for working in democracy. If they don't let me do that, then every work I put out there is somewhat a context also that underlines we need free journalism. But this is being imposed upon me.
Yeah, no, I understand. Thank you for that. Actually, to make it an underline and it's to making it more clear. And again, we lost Stavros. So on behalf of him, I thank him and I thank you. And we thank again everyone for watching us and looking forward to see you in 2 weeks on The Move. Thank you everyone for watching us. Ciao.
Thank you, Begüm.